that once upon a time, in a cozy little cottage, lived a poor farmer and his wife. Every night, as they sat by the warmth of the crackling fire, a quiet sadness filled the room. "Oh, how I wish we had a child," the farmer would say, his voice full of longing. His wife would sigh in agreement, adding, "If only we had just one, even if he were only as small as my thumb, I would be the happiest woman in the world." Well, be careful what you wish for. A few months later, their wish came true in the most surprising way. The wife gave birth to a healthy, happy baby boy, but he was incredibly tiny, bigger than her thumb. And so they lovingly named him Tiny Thumb. As the years went by, Tiny Thumb never grew any bigger. But what he lacked in size, he more than made up for in cleverness and a cheerful spirit that could brighten any day. He was a little spark of joy in their humble home. One sunny morning, the farmer was getting ready to go to the forest to chop wood. He sighed, "I really need to get this cart of wood to the forest, but I'm so tired. I wish someone could drive it for me." From down by his boots, a tiny voice piped up, "I can do it, Father. I can." The farmer looked down and saw his son, Tiny Thumb, looking up at him with determination. "Just put me in the horse's ear," the little boy said confidently, "and I'll tell him exactly where to go." The farmer couldn't help but chuckle at the idea. A boy the size of a thumb driving a horse and cart. It seemed impossible, but he saw the earnest look on his son's face and thought, well, what's the harm in letting him try? So he carefully lifted Tiny Thumb and gently placed him inside the horse's big, soft ear. Once he was settled, Tiny Thumb shouted with all his might, "Giddy up, old boy, go on." And to the farmer's absolute astonishment, the horse started walking, turning left and right exactly as Tiny Thumb directed, heading straight for the forest as if it had the most experienced driver in the world. As the cart trotted along the path, two strangers walking by stopped in their tracks, their eyes wide with disbelief. They saw a horse and cart moving along the road with no driver in sight. "What sort of magic is this?" One of them whispered. Curiosity got the better of them, and they quietly followed the cart into the forest. When the horse finally stopped, they crept closer and peered into its ear. There, to their amazement, they saw a tiny boy, no bigger than a thumb, giving the horse one last instruction. "Look at that," one man hissed to the other. "A boy that small is a marvel. If we could show him off in the city, we'd be rich. People would pay a fortune to see him." Their minds filled with greed, they approached the farmer who had just arrived. "Sir," one of them said smoothly, "we would like to buy your tiny son from you. We'll give you a whole bag of gold for him." The farmer's heart sank. He loved his son dearly, but the thought of so much money was tempting for his poor family. Just then, a tiny whisper came from his pocket. It was Tiny Thumb. "Father," he whispered, "sell me to them. Don't worry, I'm clever enough to find my way back home, I promise." Trusting his son's cleverness, the father sadly agreed. He took the bag of gold, his heart heavy with regret. The two men were overjoyed. They carefully placed Tiny Thumb on the brim of one of their hats and set off toward the city, already dreaming of their newfound wealth. They walked all day, and as night began to fall, they stopped to rest. But Tiny Thumb, who had been quiet the whole journey, piped up, "Gentlemen, I need to get down for a moment." The men, thinking nothing of it, placed their hat on the ground. The moment his feet touched the earth, Tiny Thumb scurried away as fast as his little legs could carry him and darted straight into a tiny mouse hole. He poked his head out and shouted with a grin, "Goodbye, gentlemen, thanks for the ride." The men, furious and empty-handed, couldn't possibly get him out and had to leave in a huff. Now, free, Tiny Thumb explored his new surroundings. As he wandered through a barn, he overheard two thieves whispering in the dark. They were planning to sneak into the rich priest's house and steal his gold. A mischievous idea popped into Tiny Thumb's head. "I can help you," he said, appearing suddenly. The thieves jumped, startled, before seeing the tiny figure. "I'm so small, I can slip through the bars on the window and unlock the door for you from the inside." The thieves thought this was a brilliant plan. They carried him to the priest's house and helped him crawl through the window. But once he was inside, Tiny Thumb had no intention of helping them steal. Instead, he took a deep breath and shouted at the top of his little lungs, "Hello in there. Which bag should I take first? Shall I take everything you have?" His voice, though small, was loud enough to echo through the quiet house. The cook, who was sleeping in the kitchen, woke with a start. "What was that noise?" she yelled, grabbing a broom at the thieves. Hearing her, panicked and ran for their lives, disappearing into the night without a single piece of gold. Tiny Thumb had outsmarted them all. Feeling quite proud of himself, Tiny Thumb looked for a safe place to sleep until morning. He spotted a pile of fresh, sweet-smelling hay in the corner of the stable and burrowed into it, quickly falling into a deep sleep. However, his peaceful rest was rudely interrupted at the crack of dawn. The farmer's wife came into the stable to feed the cow, and she scooped up a huge armful of hay the very pile Tiny Thumb was sleeping in and tossed it right into the cow's manger. Before he could even shout, the cow took a big bite and swallowed him whole. "Oh no, it's so dark and gooey in here," he cried out from inside the cow's stomach. It was a very strange and uncomfortable place to be. When the farmer's wife came back to milk the cow, she heard a tiny voice coming from the animal. "Help! Let me out!" Tiny Thumb yelled. The wife jumped back in shock. "The cow can talk," she shrieked, running from the stable in terror. She immediately ran to the priest and told him what had happened. The priest, looking very serious, declared, "This cow is clearly cursed by an evil spirit. It must be killed at once." And so, tragically for the poor cow, it was killed. The part of its stomach where Tiny Thumb was trapped was considered cursed and was thrown onto the compost heap outside. Just as Tiny Thumb was wondering what would happen next, a hungry wolf, attracted by the smell, came prowling by. The wolf gobbled down the entire stomach in one gulp. So, Tiny Thumb went from being inside a cow to being inside a wolf. But this time, he wasn't scared. He had a plan. From inside the wolf's belly, he called out in a friendly voice, "Hey there, Mr. Wolf. You seem hungry. I know a place with the most delicious food you've ever tasted." The wolf, surprised to hear a voice coming from his own stomach, replied, "Oh, really? Where is this marvelous place?" Tiny Thumb directed him. "Go to my father's house. You can sneak in through the kitchen drain pipe. The pantry is filled with cakes, hams, and all sorts of treats." The greedy wolf couldn't resist. He followed the directions and, sure enough, squeezed his way into the farmer's pantry. He ate and ate until he was so full and bloated that he couldn't move. He was completely stuck. That's when Tiny Thumb started to shout and sing as loudly as he possibly could. "Wake up, father! Wake up, mother! There's a wolf in our pantry!" His parents woke with a start, heard the commotion, and rushed downstairs. When they saw the fat, stuck wolf, the farmer grabbed his axe. With one swift blow, he killed the wolf, ending the threat. "Father, I'm in here. I'm inside the wolf," cried Tiny Thumb. His parents' eyes went wide. Carefully, the farmer cut open the wolf's stomach, and out popped their brave little boy, safe and sound. "Oh, my dear son." His mother cried, scooping him into her hands and hugging him gently. "We missed you so much. We were so worried," his father added, his voice thick with emotion. "We will never, ever sell you again, no matter how much money anyone offers us." Tiny Thumb looked up at his parents and smiled. "I've had quite an adventure," he said. "I've been inside a mouse hole, a cow's belly, and a wolf's stomach. But honestly, all I want now is to stay right here at home with you." And from that day on, Tiny Thumb lived happily and safely with his parents, who loved their clever, tiny son more than all the gold in the world.